7 years in a mortal body is a mere blink for an eternal entity. But for Elian, trapped within the flesh and bone of a growing boy, it felt like 7 centuries of agonizing tedium. Aethelgard did not forgive weakness. In a society where social hierarchy was dictated by the number of lumens your soul could project, being an unlit was worse than being a criminal. A criminal at least had the capacity to act, whereas an unlit was considered furniture, a genetic error to be tolerated but never celebrated. By age 12, Elian had perfected the art of social invisibility. He learned that if he walked with his head down and his shoulders slumped, people simply stopped seeing him. He became a ghost in his own home. His father, High Custodian Marcus, had stopped speaking to him years ago, devoting all his attention to training the family recruits and, more painfully, his adopted nephew, Yerick, a boy with a solar resonance, so bright it made your teeth ache. His mother, Elena, still loved him, but it was a love tainted by unbearable pity. She brought him books, stroked his hair, and whispered that it would all pass, as if his lack of magic were a seasonal flu rather than a life sentence. But in the shadows, far from the looks of pity and disdain, Elian was no ghost. He was a predator in the making. The library at Vane Manor was his sanctuary, not because he loved human knowledge, which he considered rudimentary and rife with cheap theological propaganda, but because nobody else ever went there. He spent his nights devouring texts on resonance theory, hunting for cracks in its dogma. He discovered that the magic of this world operated like a circuit. The Primal Sun emitted the frequency, and humans acted as conductors. The purer the conductor, the greater the power. But Elian wasn't a conductor. He was a sink. That night, the moon hung low and silver over the floating peaks of Aethelgard. The house slept. Elian slipped out of bed, dressed in black training gear he'd stolen from the servant's laundry. His body, though slight for his age, was a taut steel cable. He lacked the muscle mass of the solar warriors, bulked up by magical energy, but he possessed an unnatural, fibrous density. Every night, he subjected his human anatomy to drills that would break a grown man, forcing cellular regeneration through small doses of stolen energy. He climbed out the second-story window, descending the ivy with the agility of a spider. His destination wasn't the garden, but the Whispering Woods, a strip of wild vegetation growing on the lower rim of the floating island, where tree roots dangled into the infinite void of the sky below. It was forbidden ground. Rumor had it the beasts dwelling there were corrupted by their proximity to the abyss. To Elian, they were simply lunch. The air was cold and biting. Elian ran, his feet barely making a sound on the leaf litter. His senses, honed by his true spiritual nature, tracked his surroundings not through sight, but by perceiving the flow of energy. He could smell life. A squirrel on a branch, a small, nervous spark, an owl watching a cold, calculating flame, and something bigger, something hungry. He stopped in a clearing lit by bioluminescent mushrooms. Before him, emerging from the undergrowth, stood an ether wolf. The beast was the size of a horse, with fur that looked like it was woven from bluish smoke and eyes that glowed like live coals. These creatures fed on the island's residual magic. They were apex predators. For a magicless 12-year-old boy, this was a death sentence. Elian smiled. The wolf snarled, a rumble that vibrated against Elian's sternum, and lunged. Its claws glowed with kinetic energy, capable of shredding steel. Elian didn't draw a weapon. He didn't move until the very last second. When the beast's jaws were inches from his throat, Elian executed a fluid sidestep, a movement of perfect economy, and pressed his open palm against the animal's exposed flank. "Consume," he whispered in the dead tongue of the dark gods. There was no flash of light, no explosion, only a wet, slurping sound, like someone sucking the dregs of a milkshake. The ether wolf shrieked, but the sound was abruptly cut short. At the point of contact, the blue smoky fur began to swirl into Elian's hand, sucked in by an invisible gravity. The beast tried to pull away, but it was locked to him. Its muscles withered in seconds, its light dimmed. Elian felt the torrent of raw energy flood his system. Hot, feral, tasting of iron and ozone. His veins traced black beneath his pale skin for an instant. In less than 10 seconds, the ether wolf was nothing more than a dry husk of skin and bone that crumbled into gray dust as it hit the ground. Elian took a deep breath, his exhale pluming as frost in the air. He looked down at his hands. They were trembling, not from fear, but from ecstasy. The wolf's energy coursed through him, knitting together micro tears in his muscles, fortifying his bones, sharpening his vision. It was a drug, and like any drug, the high would fade, leaving behind a hunger that was even worse. Insufficient, he muttered, kicking at the creature's remains. That barely scratches the itch. I need a pure source. He made it back to the manor before dawn, feeling stronger, faster, but also emptier. That was the curse of his new existence. He was a bottomless pit. Breakfast the next morning was tense. A letter bearing the gold royal seal sat on the table. Marcus Vane was staring at it like it was a declaration of war. The summons for Solaria Academy has arrived, Marcus said, his voice low, never lifting his eyes from his plate. Yarick has been accepted directly into the elite class. That's wonderful, Elena exclaimed, trying to inject some cheer into the dreary atmosphere. We knew he'd make it. Yes, Marcus grunted. It's an honor for House Vane. Elian ate his toast in silence, knowing exactly what was coming. Elian, his father said. The name sounded strange coming from him, like a foreign word. You turn 13 in a month. You know what that means. Recruitment age, Elian replied, his voice neutral. For those with the gift, it's the academy. Marcus continued, finally meeting his eyes. There was pain in his gaze, but mostly resignation. For those without, it's the auxiliary infantry, or domestic service. I've arranged a position for you in the administrative archives down in the lower city. You'll be safe. No one will bother you there. It's honorable work. Elian set his toast down. The clink of china against china rang sharp in the silence. No, he said. Marcus blinked. Elena pressed a hand to her chest. Excuse me, his father asked, his pitch dropping an octave. I said I'm not going to the archives. Elian wiped the corner of his mouth with his napkin. I'm going to Solaria Academy. Yarick, who had been shoveling eggs into his mouth across the table, barked out a laugh, spraying bits of food. You? The academy? Yarick scoffed. Elian, you can't even light a candle. You'll get killed in the entrance exam. They won't even let you through the front gate. The boy's right, Marcus said, his voice hardening. Don't be stupid, Elian. The academy is for resonance warriors. You're different. I won't let you stain the family name by making a fool of yourself, or worse, dying in the testing arena. Elian stood up slowly. The energy from the wolf the night before was still buzzing inside him, begging for release. Academy Regulations, Section 4, Paragraph 12, Elian recited from memory. Any citizen of noble lineage has the right to claim the blood trial, if lacking manifest resonance, to demonstrate pure martial worth. Marcus slammed his hand on the table, making the silverware jump. The blood trial is a barbaric relic. No one has passed it in 100 years. They'll pit you against a level 3 combat automaton. No magic, no armor. It's assisted suicide, Elian. I won't allow it. Then disown me, Elian said coldly. The ensuing silence was absolute. Elena sobbed openly. Marcus turned a deep shade of red, the veins in his neck throbbing. What did you say? If you're so worried about me staining your name, then disown me. Strip me of the Vane name. I'll go as a nameless bastard. But I'm going. Elian held his father's gaze. It wasn't the look of a defiant child. It was the look of a king negotiating with a rebellious subject. For the first time in his life, Marcus felt a chill looking at his own son. He saw something in those gray eyes, a depth that shouldn't have been there. Fine, Marcus whispered, sinking heavily into his chair as if all the energy had drained out of him. If you want to die that badly, I won't stop you. But don't expect any help. If you fail, if you crawl away begging for mercy, don't look toward the stands where I'm sitting. On the day of the entrance trials, the Solaria Academy arena was packed. It was a spectacle. Hundreds of applicants were showing off their skills. Fireballs, light shields, gravity jumps. The air smelled of ozone and sweat. Elian stood in the pit of the desperate, a side entrance reserved for special cases and the insane. He was alone. He wore light armor made of old leather that he'd bought with his meager savings. He carried no flashy weapons, only a standard-issue steel short sword with a rusted hilt. Next applicant, the instructor bellowed from the center of the arena. Elian, no surname, petitioner for the blood trial. The crowd erupted in laughter. Jeers followed. A suicide case? He heard someone shout. Why are they wasting time with this? Elian walked toward the center of the arena, the yellow sand crunching beneath his boots. In front of him, the iron gates at the far end screeched open. Out of the darkness emerged the automaton, a 10-foot-tall golem of bronze and glass, powered by a resonance core in its chest. It had 4 arms, each wielding a spinning blade. It was a machine designed to kill mages, fast and brutal. The objective is to survive for 3 minutes, the instructor announced with boredom, or destroy the core. Begin. The golem didn't wait. It lunged forward with terrifying speed for its size. The ground trembled. The crowd held its breath, expecting to see the boy crushed within the first few seconds. Elian didn't draw his sword. He stood perfectly still, arms hanging at his sides, watching the metal giant close in. Analyzing attack pattern, his millennia-old strategist's mind thought. Torso rotation at 45 degrees. Frontal charge. Energy waste in the leg servomotors. As the first downward swing of the blades was about to split him in two, Elian moved. It wasn't magic. It was perfect physics. He stepped inside the golem's attack arc, dodging the blade by millimeters. The gust from the blow ruffled his hair. The crowd gasped. Elian was now inside the golem's guard. Confused by the target's proximity, the automaton tried to back away to bring its other arms into play. But Elian placed his hand on the bronze chest plate, right over the glowing crystal core. I'm hungry, Elian thought. He didn't use full absorption. That would reveal his nature and mark him as a dark heretic. Instead, he used a technique he developed on garden insects, dissonance. He sent a tiny pulse of his own void energy into the golem's core. Not to consume it, but to corrupt the flow. It was like throwing a stone into clockwork gears. The core's energy slammed into the dark impurity, creating a violent backflow. The golem ground to a halt. Its lights flickered erratically. The gears shrieked. Elian seized the machine's paralysis. He drew his short sword and, with a precise strike, drove it into a joint in the automaton's neck, severing the hydraulic control cables. The 10-foot giant dropped to its knees, inert with the sound of a collapsing building. Elian leaped back gracefully and sheathed his sword before the golem even hit the ground. The entire exchange had lasted 15 seconds. The silence in the arena was deathly. No one was laughing. The instructor stood there, mouth agape. In the VIP stands, Marcus Vane had risen to his feet, pale as a ghost, his knuckles white as he gripped the railing. They didn't understand what had happened. To them, it looked like the boy had found a miraculous weak point or the machine had simply malfunctioned. But high atop the Academy's tallest tower, behind a window of dark glass, a figure draped in red robes watched. Interesting, the figure murmured, eyes gleaming with lethal curiosity. The machine didn't fail. He silenced it. Elian looked out at the silent crowd, his face impassive. He glanced up toward where he knew his father was sitting, and for the first time in years, he smiled. It wasn't the smile of a son. It was the smile of the abyss staring back. Trial passed, the instructor said, barely regaining his composure. Elian, you have been admitted. As he walked toward the victor's exit, Elian felt a sharp pang in his chest. The small pulse of dissonance he had used had come at a high price. His human body wasn't ready to channel the void offensively without consequences. He coughed into his hand and, looking down, saw a smear of viscous black blood. He wiped it away quickly before anyone could see. The flesh is weak, he thought as he entered the dark tunnel leading to the locker rooms. I need to evolve, and this academy will be my hunting ground. But as he rounded the corner, A shadow detached itself from the wall. It wasn't a student. It was a girl, perhaps his age, with silver hair and eyes that lacked pupils, just pure white. "You smell like death, newbie," she said, her voice sounding like broken glass bells. "And I don't mean the golem." Elian tensed, his killer instinct spiking to the max. Had he been found out this quickly? "I don't know what you're talking about," he replied, readying himself to kill her if necessary. The girl drifted closer, hovering a few inches off the ground. "Don't worry. Your secret is safe with me. For now. But be careful, devourer. In this school, there are worse things than monsters. And you just rang the dinner bell for all of them." She smiled, revealing teeth that were slightly pointed, and vanished in a thin air as if she had never been there, leaving only the scent of ozone and ancient blood behind. Elian stood alone in the dark corridor. For the first time since his rebirth, he felt something other than rage or contempt. He felt uncertainty. The hunt had begun, but it seemed he wasn't the only predator on the board.